He who has conquered his own desires sits upon a throne that no empire can overthrow and no woman can command. Nietzsche. There is a moment in a man's life, usually when the biological clock crosses the silent border of 40 years, when something fundamental breaks. It is not a break of weakness, but rather the breaking of invisible chains that bound him to a failed system of validation. At 40, a man is not old. He is, finally, filtered. The erratic and impulsive fire of youth, that uncontrolled flame that burned fuel without direction, gives way to something much more dangerous and infinitely more powerful. The constant, cold, blue flame of wisdom. He no longer feels the visceral need to prove anything to anyone, because the court of public opinion has lost jurisdiction over his soul. This man has already walked through the desert. He has lost battles he was certain he would win. He has been deceived by smiles hiding predatory intentions, and he has seen promises which once seemed solid as rock crumble like sand castles before the first tide of difficulties. And it was exactly there, in the deafening silence of his own ruins, far from applause and distractions, that he understood what truly has non-negotiable value in this life. It is at this turning point, this psychological singularity, that many men simply stop. They stop running. They stop chasing. They stop orbiting the feminine as if they were satellites without an orbit of their own. And let it be clear, this is not disinterest, much less impotence. This is a surgical, brutal, and liberating clarity. The man who has lived long enough has seen the backstage of the social game. He has decoded the matrix of human interactions and understood an uncomfortable truth. Female desire, more often than not, is not a fixed constant, but a strategic variable. He realized, through the exhaustive repetition of patterns, that what was often called love was merely a narcissistic request for validation, that the sweet praise came with a contractual condition in the fine print, and that the affection offered was merely the advance interest on a future emotional debt. He did not become bitter, as many erroneously judge. He became awake. The 40-year-old man does not want war, for he knows the cost of ammunition. But he is also not willing to lose a single second of his life with those who live to manufacture drama to feel alive. He learned, paying the highest possible price, that peace is infinitely more seductive than any body sculpted in gyms. He discovered that the ability to sleep in absolute silence with a clear conscience and a mind empty of others' concerns is more valuable than lying next to a stunning beauty who sucks his vital energy like an emotional parasite. When young, he ran. He ran desperately. He wanted to prove he was worthy, that he deserved love, that he could be the chosen one among so many other competitors. He lived in a constant state of auction, offering his dignity in exchange for crumbs of affection. But today the equation has changed. He understood that true love, the kind that builds empires and does not just consume resources, is not begged for. It is attracted. He no longer asks for attention because life, that severe teacher, has already taught him that whoever needs to beg for presents is, in truth, signing a certificate of submission. Now he chooses what the world once chose for him. He embraces solitude not as a punishment, but as a sanctuary. He embraces purpose and real power. He works in silence, like a nuclear submarine, invisible on the surface, but lethal in its capacity. He trains his body not to be admired at the beach, but to be an efficient war machine. He takes care of himself. He reads voraciously. He becomes an improved version of himself day after day. And ironically, the same women who ignored him when he was just a noisy and needy boy now watch him from afar, with a mixture of confusion and desire, trying to understand what changed in that man. What changed is that he stopped revolving around them. He pulled the pedestal from under their feet and placed his own world at the center of the solar system. While many call him cold, he knows it is only unshakable focus. While they say he has lost his romanticism, he knows he has only stopped romanticizing illusions and projecting qualities onto those who do not possess them. The man who reaches 40 with lucidity understands a fundamental market law. Female beauty is abundant, renewable, and common. But character? Character is the true scarcity. And it is this economic understanding that changes everything. He stops running because he understood that his market value is not tied to the number of women who desire him, but to the non-negotiable peace he feels when none distract him. He looks around and realizes how much he has lost, how much of his life was drained trying to impress people who had no depth, people who were just beautiful facades without internal furniture. He realizes with an urgency that only maturity brings, that time is his most precious asset, and that energy is a sacred and finite resource. Therefore, he now becomes selective, mysterious, quiet, and lethal. Women, sensitive to power dynamics, feel this. They feel the air of independence. They feel the gaze of one who no longer needs external approval to breathe. And it is exactly this self-sufficiency that intrigues and destabilizes them. Because psychologically, the man who does not run attracts. The man who does not beg dominates. The man who does not bend is the only one who is remembered. At 40, he understands something that few have the courage to admit out loud. A woman is just a pleasant detail in the life of someone who has already found a greater purpose. He now walks differently. His stride is firm, rooted in the ground. His energy has changed frequency. He doesn't want to conquer volatile hearts. He wants to conquer the world. He wants to leave a legacy. He has already understood that the time for proving value is over. The game has turned, and his silence speaks louder with more authority than 1,000 words of self-affirmation. The man who used to run after, sweating and panting, now walks alone. But in every solitary step, there is power. Each step is a reminder that he has defeated his own biological instinct, defeated the paralyzing fear of being alone, defeated the social addiction of pleasing. And in doing so, he became what every man should aim to be: free. As the years pass, the fog dissipates, and the man realizes that what he called passion was in fact chemical dependency. He confused dramatic intensity with real connection, carnal desire with deep love, and ego validation with genuine affection. Until the day he woke up tired. Not a physical tiredness, but an existential tiredness. Tired of investing in those who only knew how to withdraw from the emotional account. Tired of being the safe harbor for those who only knew how to bring storms. It is at this moment that he awakens, not with anger, but with a frightening lucidity. The mature man understands that desire is a powerful nuclear energy, but when misdirected, it enslaves. When young, he was a hostage to the female gaze, dancing to their music. Every smile, every touch, every notification on his cell phone was a dose of dopamine that made him believe he was alive. But now he knows the truth. True power lies in dominating one's own desire, not in satisfying it immediately. He understands that self-control, the mastery over one's own impulses, is the purest form of freedom. At 40, he is no longer impressed by makeup, artificial curves, or rehearsed phrases. He has developed X-ray vision. He learned that sensuality is a biological trap when it is not accompanied by essence and intelligence. He has lived long enough to calculate the cost and see how the charm of one night can cost months of mental peace and financial stability. And that is why he no longer runs. He observes, analyzes, and coldly decides if the investment is worth it. Because now, he is the one who selects. The tables have turned. Women miss the man who melted, who begged, who sent desperate messages in the middle of the night. But that man died. He was buried under the lessons of life. What emerged in his place is someone who understood his own value. Someone who realized that giving attention is investing vital energy, and energy is too expensive to be wasted on someone who does not add value, who brings no return on investment. He learned that a true man does not need to prove desire. He awakens desire. When he enters a room, he doesn't need to say anything. His calm gaze, his firm posture, and his total absence of hurry say it all. He carries the energy of someone who wants nothing desperately, but can have everything if he so decides. And that is the most powerful and magnetic energy there is. Because when a man stops running after women, he starts running after himself. He starts investing in his own health, sculpting his own body, sharpening his mind, and elevating his spirit. He seeks knowledge, silence, and geographic and financial freedom. He discovers that true masculinity is not in possessing many women, an infantile vanity game, but in not being possessed by any. He stops being guided by hormonal impulses and starts being guided by an unshakable purpose. The women who previously despised him now look at him with feline curiosity. They want to understand why he doesn't react to games, why he doesn't praise the obvious, why he seems so distant and inaccessible. They don't realize that he isn't distant as a tactic. He is simply on another level of existence. He stopped seeking cheap emotion and started seeking deep meaning. He learned that sex without connection is empty, and company without admiration is just noise. Now he wants something that few understand: peace. This man does not seek approval. He no longer tries to be the nice guy, the savior, the hero. He understood that limitless kindness is weakness disguised as virtue, and that in the real world, being respected is infinitely more important for survival than being loved. The 40-year-old man knows that true love is not born of pity or insistence, but of admiration. And admiration only comes from those who impose themselves, from those who have direction, from those who know how to say a no that echoes like thunder. He learned that the word no is the most powerful of social filters. No pushes away what is shallow and brings closer what is real. And when he begins to say no, everything changes. The same faces that saw him as common now see him as a challenge, a fortress to be conquered. But he doesn't want to be a challenge. He wants to be unattainable for those who do not deserve access. The man who stops running after women is not cold. He is selective. He does not hate love. He just learned to love himself first and with greater intensity. He has already lost himself in other people, already tried to live the lives of others and paid dearly for it. Now he prefers the solitary path of discipline to the ephemeral pleasure of distraction. And in the end, it is this monastic self-control that makes him irresistible, because the world belongs to the man who is not moved by desire, but by superior consciousness. There is a type of man that time molds as fire molds steel. He went through losses, betrayals, disillusions, and rebirths. And at the end of it all, what remained was not ashes, but a calm that scares the unprepared. This calm does not come from disinterest, but from an absolute understanding of human nature. The man who has lived enough has learned that true power lies in not reacting. He no longer needs to prove how good he is, nor justify what he feels. He learned that often silence is worth more than 1,000 speeches of defense. When a woman tries to provoke him with tests of jealousy or disdain, he does not react. When they ignore him, he does not lower himself. When they test him, he just observes with the gaze of someone watching a child throwing a tantrum. Because he knows that whoever tries to take away his peace has lost their own control. And nothing is more biologically attractive than a man who does not shake before emotional chaos. This type of man is dangerous, not because he does harm, but because it is impossible to manipulate him. He was already conditioned by society to believe he needed to be kind, romantic, and understanding all the time. But he realized that this image of the ideal man was created to domesticate him, to make him harmless. Now he does not seek to be perfect. He seeks to be real. And the real is strong, direct, unpredictable. At 40, he no longer needs praise to inflate his ego. He knows what he is. He does not seek looks. He imposes presence. He does not pursue love. He becomes the type of man that love respects and fears losing. And this changes the dynamic of any relationship. Women notice this energy and feel something they cannot explain, a mixture of primitive attraction and fear. Fear of losing someone who clearly does not need them to survive, because the man who does not need them becomes the mystery that everyone wants to unravel. He does not send flowers to buy affection. He does not write poems to apologize for existing. He does not beg for attention. He lives, and living well with autonomy and purpose is the greatest declaration of power a man can make. Each achievement of his, each new step toward his goal, is a silent reminder that he is master of himself. When young, he thought love was a priority. Now he understands that love is a consequence of being someone whole, focused, disciplined, who does not bend for emotional crumbs. The mature man is in no hurry. He knows that everything he needs comes to him when he is at peace and prepared. And peace is exactly what he protects with tooth and nail, like a guard dog of his own spirit. He moves away from useless fights, from toxic relationships, from people who live on drama and vampirize energy. He no longer participates in the emotional theater that the world has transformed into a daily routine. He learned to say no and discovered that no is the foundation of personal freedom. Each time he says no to a manipulation, he says yes to his strength. Each time he chooses himself, he recovers a piece of the power that the world tried to take from him. He observes younger men destroying themselves for female approval and feels compassion, not superiority, because he has already been in that dungeon. He was already the court jester who believed that pleasing the queen was the way to the throne. But now he understands. The throne is conquered not given as a gift. Those who seek to be loved at any cost end up losing their own soul, and a man without a soul is the favorite toy of any immature woman. The man of 40 no longer plays this game. He is the prize. He is the final destination, not the path. He knows that a man with self-mastery is worth more than 10 weak men who kneel for a smile. Therefore, he does not rush, he does not supplicate, he does not try to convince anyone of his value. He lets the world discover him, if the world is worthy. His indifference is not arrogance, it is distilled wisdom. He understood that not every look deserves a response, not every invitation deserves presence, not every woman deserves access to his intimacy. At 40, he is the guardian of his own temple, and only those who understand the value of silence, fidelity, and peace enter. This man is not proud of being alone out of rebellion, but he is proud of not needing anyone to be complete. He does not run from love. He has simply stopped begging for affection like a beggar. And that is exactly why, when he finally loves, this love has weight, has value. Because he does not love out of need, he loves by conscious choice. There comes a time when a man understands what makes him desirable is not a ripped body, money in the bank, or social status, although all of that helps. What makes him irresistible is tranquility. It is the fact that he does not need to prove anything to anyone. This serenity, conquered with time and deep scars, is what differentiates him from the boys who still live trying to be accepted by the tribe. The man of 40 is different because he has already been deceived, already been used, already been discarded like trash, and survived to tell the story. He has already loved wrongly, already lost himself in illusions, and discovered that true power is not in being loved, but in being imperturbable. When he looks in the mirror, he does not look for lost youth. He looks for respect, and he respects himself. Women feel this like a scent in the air. They know he does not need them, and it drives them crazy, activating the trigger of imminent loss. Because the man who does not kneel is the man who dominates. He no longer lives to impress the audience. He lives to evolve the protagonist. While others compete for attention on stage, he competes with himself backstage. While others lose themselves in complex emotional games, he becomes a fortress of focus, calm, and coldness. He learned that emotions are like tropical storms, intense but passing. And whoever lives reacting to the weather of others never finds their own sun. The mature man is dangerous because he seeks nothing outside that he has not already cultivated within. He does not want to be saved by a woman, nor does he want to save anyone from their own mediocrity. He found in himself what he sought in other people: completeness. And this completeness makes him free. Free from subtle emotional blackmail, free from the pathological need for others' approval, free from the ancestral fear of solitude. Women try to understand what moves him, but they don't understand because the old tricks no longer work. What moves him now is purpose. He wants to build, leave a legacy, strengthen his body and mind, master the art of silence. He discovered that the greatest pleasure in life is not in conquering a new woman every week, but in conquering himself every day. The excitement that once came from provocative messages, exposed bodies, and empty promises now comes from measurable progress, from iron discipline, from seeing himself becoming increasingly strong and unshakable. He looks at the world with calm eyes, and this calm is the reflection of the civil war he has already won within himself. No woman is capable of controlling a man who has already faced and tamed his own demons. Because what once seduced him, the look, the touch, the validating attention, is now just background noise before the grandeur of the silence he built. This man doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His presence already imposes immediate respect. He speaks little, saves words, but when he speaks, his sentences have the weight of law. And not because he seeks to impress, but because each phrase comes from someone who learned in the school of pain, loss, and rebirth. He is no longer shaken by rejection, because he learned that rejection is not defeat. It is deliverance and redirection to something better. The man who no longer runs after women understood the mechanics of the universe. Modern femininity admires and craves the masculine that she cannot control, domesticate, or predict. And that is what makes him so magnetic. He doesn't play to win women, he plays to win himself. And paradoxically, when he stops running, that is when they start coming in his direction. At 40, he becomes the man he never had time to be before, when he was too busy trying to please. He takes care of himself, reads, trains, travels, grows. He becomes an empire of one man, and into that empire, only those who add value, who bring bricks, not those who bring sledgehammers, enter. There is no room for drama, blackmail, vanity, or fragile ego. The mature man does not need promises of the future. He lives on present facts. And the greatest fact is that he finally understood he was born to lead his own life, not to be a supporting character in someone else's life. And when a man understands this, the whole world respects him, including the women who once underestimated him. He doesn't hate them. He just sees them with a dispassionate clarity. And this clarity is what keeps him distant and safe. Because when a man awakens, he stops being part of the game and becomes the board where the game happens. At 40 years old, a man finally understands that the greatest mistake of youth was running after those who would never see him completely. He was intense, sincere, ready to give the gold of his soul, and even so, he was always considered little. But now he sees that the problem was never him. It was the waste of time, energy, faith, soul. He delivered the gold of his essence to those who only knew how to play with cheap jewelry. The man who awakens after 40 no longer wants to prove anything. He has already been betrayed and forgiven, not for them, but for him. He has already loved and been forgotten. He has already humiliated himself for love and reaped silence and contempt. But instead of becoming bitter and resentful, he became wise and stoic. He learned to live without an audience, without approval, without neediness. He learned that a man doesn't need to be understood. He needs to be strong. Now he values what most despise: the morning silence, the sacred routine, the invisible daily progress. He doesn't need to post victories on social media. He doesn't need to announce achievements to receive likes. He acts in secret, and the result speaks for him. Women look and don't understand how he became like this, so attractive, so secure. How can a man seem more interesting when he seems to need no one? It's simple. Because he found what they will never be able to give: inner peace. He lives at his own pace. If he wants to go out, he goes out. If he wants to stay home reading, he stays. There is no more hurry, no more fear of missing out. He has already run too much. He has already chased mirages that melted in the heat of female vanity. Now he understands that true seduction is calm, firm, silent. A man at peace with himself is the most attractive being on planet Earth. While many men age pathetically trying to relive their youth, he ages becoming timeless, like a classic. Each wrinkle tells a story of overcoming. Each scar proves he survived the combat. And inside him, there is a look that doesn't need words to say, "I saw hell and came back stronger." He no longer wants just any woman. He wants the exception, the one who brings lightness, who adds instead of sucking, who understands that loving such a man is not trying to control him, but having the honor of accompanying him in the silence. But he doesn't need that to be happy. He understood that love is not the final destination. It is a bonus, and if it comes, it will be welcome. If it doesn't come, he remains full and satisfied, because what moves him now is no longer desire, but mastery. The man of 40 is dangerous because he is complete. He is mentally sharp as a blade, emotionally armored like a tank, and spiritually centered like a monk. He knows his own value and no longer negotiates his peace for anything or anyone. He doesn't want to know about games, psychological tests, or manipulation. He has a life to live and is not going to waste another minute proving he deserves to be in it. He is the prize, and he knows it. Women feel the gravitational weight of this energy. Try to provoke him, test him, and nothing happens, because he no longer reacts. He only observes, smiles internally, and follows his path. He learned that whoever needs to prove power is because they have none, and he has so much power over himself
that he can choose not to use it. This is true masculinity. Contained power. Fire under control. The sword in the sheath that only comes out when necessary. Now he inspires other men. He shows that aging is not losing value, it is distilling strength. He shows that time does not destroy a real man, it only polishes him. And he shows that when a man stops living to please, the world begins to revolve around him. He understands that while the young run after immediate pleasure, he seeks eternal purpose. While boys worry about who notices them, he worries about who respects them.
He traded the deafening noise of the world for the clear sound of his own conscience, and in that silence builds invisible empires of discipline, focus, and wisdom. The mature man does not seek love everywhere desperately, because he finally found it in the only inexhaustible source, in himself. He looks at the past without regret, for it was the necessary school. The present with gratitude, and the future with absolute serenity. He knows he is just beginning, because the peak of a man is not physical youth, it is mental lucidity, and lucidity makes him unstoppable. He is the man who does not run after women, he runs after destiny. He is the man who does not ask for attention, he attracts respect. He is the man who does not beg for love, he inspires devotion. Because when a man awakens, the world bows. There is a type of man that time does not weaken. Time reveals him. At 40, he is no longer guided by primitive instincts, but by elevated consciousness. He lives strategically, silently, and every gesture of his is calculated, not out of insecurity, but for economy of motion and mastery. He is a man who has transcended the social and emotional game, a man who has already understood that the true throne is not outside, but inside him. He walks the streets and observes. He sees the younger ones running after illusions, losing vital energy, trying to prove masculinity through ephemeral and empty conquests. He just smiles inside, not out of arrogance, but with the compassion of one who has already known the high price of haste. Youth still confuses quantity with power. The mature man knows that true power is scarcity. He speaks little, appears little, exposes himself little, and that is exactly what makes him so notable and valuable. In a world where everyone screams for attention like needy children, he dominates through absence and mystery. He has become a living myth, not because he sought to be admired, but because he learned the inestimable value of not mixing with the masses. He learned that a man is worth the silence he endures, the temptations he resists, and the emotions that do not control him. Therefore, he moved away from the noise, the petty dispute, female vanities, and small emotional wars. He lives in the shadow, and it is in the shadow that he builds his real strength. This man has already been wounded by words. manipulated by promises, betrayed by beautiful faces. And all this made him develop X-ray vision to see what lies behind the beauty, the mask. He doesn't hate women, but he no longer believes in them blindly like a devotee. He sees the game, sees the gestures, reads between the lines of behavior. He knows the patterns, the calculated smiles, the unintentional messages that are full of intention. Nothing surprises him anymore, and that is exactly why he has become unattainable. The modern woman tries to decipher him, but he is a cryptic code. He does not react to provocations, does not fall into ego traps, does not get moved by rehearsed tears. He has seen it all before, in exhaustive reruns. Now, what moves him is what challenges him intellectually and spiritually. What attracts him is what makes him grow. He seeks depth in a world shallow as a saucer, seeks loyalty in a liquid time, and seeks truth amidst the theater of appearances. Therefore, he stands out not only for beauty or style, but for the absolute scarcity of his essence. He doesn't want to know about modern relationships based on superficial exchanges, nor about women who use the body as a currency of power. He observes all this from above, like one watching a childish game at recess. He learned that supreme masculinity is not dominating women. It is dominating oneself before them. And when a man masters his impulses, the whole world begins to serve him. This man lives with lightness. He wakes up early, trains, reads, works in silence. Each day is a brick in his construction. He doesn't seek quick rewards because he has already understood that time is on the side of those who have strategic patience. He dresses well, speaks little, and looks into the eyes, not to seduce cheaply, but to see the soul. He doesn't need anything, and it is precisely this absence of need that makes him irresistible. Women, upon crossing his path, feel something different in the air. It is not just passion, it is reverent respect. Because the man who asks for nothing is the man who can have everything. And what he wants almost no one has to offer: peace, loyalty, truth, and silence. At 40, he no longer measures life in romantic conquests, but in internal and spiritual conquests. Each mistake he made him colder, more centered, more lethal in his decisions. He learned to move without haste because he knows that whoever has control over time has control over everything. While the world runs desperately, he walks, and whoever walks in silence and with direction overtakes all who run in circles. This man is no longer a hunter in the forest. He is the forest itself. He is no longer a player. He is the owner of the casino. He doesn't seek external recognition. He is the very symbol of what every man should become. The man who stopped running after women is the same one who learned to run after purpose, and, therefore, everything that is futile stopped having gravity over him. He now wakes up early, not out of salary obligation, but out of personal honor. He does not argue, he decides. He does not compete, he creates. He does not promise, he fulfills. Is he cold? Perhaps, in the eyes of those who are needy. But it is a different coldness, not that of ice that breaks, but that of tempered steel, firm, disciplined, molded by pain and time. He no longer believes in beautiful words, only in consistent and repeated attitudes, and that makes him rare as a diamond. Rarity is what attracts value, but it is also what drives away the weak and the opportunists, because a man like this does not fit into small molds. He dictates the rhythm of the dance. He understood that the love that really matters is not what the world applauds on social media, but what is born of mutual and silent respect. And if there is no respect, he prefers the majestic silence of his own company. He learned that being alone is the exclusive luxury of the strong, and that solitude is not a punishment, it is a throne of reflection. And from this throne, he observes the chaos of the world with the serenity of an emperor who has already won all the necessary wars, the wars against himself. Women look at him, desire him, test him, but he doesn't take the bait. Because whoever has already mastered their own fire no longer burns out of others' curiosity. He loves mystery, loves calm, loves the power to decide without the pressure of the clock. And when a woman finds him, she realizes she is before something that time almost extinguished, a complete man. This man is the last bastion of true masculinity, not the one that imposes itself by brute force or the shout, but the one that reigns by undeniable presence. He doesn't need to shout to be heard, nor show off to be noticed. His simple way of being in the world, breathing calm and exhaling confidence, is already a silent manifesto. I don't run anymore. I walk toward the infinite, and whoever wants to, let them keep up with my step. And in the end, that is what defines the man who awakens. He does not desperately seek the right woman to fill a vacuum. He works, day after day, to become the right man. And the rest? The rest is just a consequence.